everybody. Welcome to the Live Abundantly podcast. What you're about to see is an interview with Dr. Barbara Byers. She is an amazing therapist, over 20 years of experience, and she's written a book called Voices of the Soul that you absolutely have to read. She's my special guest today, and I know that you're going to learn so much from her. She is one of the wisest people I've ever met and one of my personal heroes. So one thing I thought about with you is just being able to talk about the masculine and the feminine, and what you've seen as far as how that dynamic can affect marriages.
Okay.
I feel like it's one of those underlying roots that we aren't really paying attention to. Mm-hmm. And yet when that dynamic gets off, it really affects your ability to come together well. And so I know for me, when I get in my masculine, it is repulsive to my very masculine husband. Like, it's not something that he feels drawn to. If I am staying in that position out of fear or self-preservation or whatever made me flip into that, it doesn't actually make him draw close to me. It kind of pushes him away. And I think when we have those reversals where the husband is operating in the feminine and then the woman takes on the masculine, then you have a really difficult dynamic on your hands. And so I've been in several of these scenarios, and I just know that it's one of those things that I think affects marriages, and we're not looking at that one. We're looking at pornography, we're looking at finances, we're missing that dynamic.
Yeah. And I would say, I think I because words are important.
Yes.
I would say it this way. We have both the masculine and the feminine within our soul. Women have the masculine, men have feminine, and we need that, because if we define masculine and feminine, we understand we need that. So what I think you're talking about is a woman stepping into a masculinized position.
Yes.
Becoming just using the false masculine, if you will. Some kind of control. Yeah. And men who are too feminized stepping in to their false, so that they're being too passive, too compliant, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's perfect. Yeah. I would just love to hear you speak on that. I think you've had enough experience personally, as well as in the position of therapist, to be able to really speak to that and help people to understand that may be the dynamic there that is actually creating a lot of their frustration in their marriage. And then what is the path back to the authentic self that is not feeling like I have to step into this in order to accomplish something, whatever that may be.
Right.
And it pulls us out of being able to be in our God design.
Right.
And I love it, because we do have the masculine. I need the masculine energy on a daily basis to do the things that I do.
Absolutely.
But then when it comes to that, the two becoming one, it doesn't really work so well once you're in that place. So anyhow, I thought that would be good to kind of go into.
Well, I wish I brushed up a little more, but
no. It'll be a fun conversation. Yeah.
So let me just start then with maybe defining what's the masculine and what's the feminine.
Yes.
Although
that'd be awesome.
I'll say that, and then it's like impossible to define.
No.
Right? Because these are movements of our soul. And that's the first thing I want to say. They are not roles. Right. They're not roles. A woman cooks, a man goes to work. No, a woman can go to work, a man can cook. A woman can lead, right? A man can nurture. So these are not roles we're talking about. We're talking about the movement within our soul. So the true masculine within our soul is that which enables us to lead, to initiate, to press forward. I always just have this funny little picture in my head of someone, usually a man, with a machete in his hand, facing a jungle with a group of people behind him, maybe his family, saying, all right, follow me. And he's just hacking his way through the jungle, because the masculine takes on difficulty and is able to say, there's going to be inevitable things in life that come that are really hard, but there's a strength in the masculine that sticks with it, that presses through, that takes the machete in hand or the sword in hand, And so that's the masculine to me, that which initiates and shapes and forms. It's more of the doing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then, and I'll talk about the false masculine in a minute, but the feminine in our soul and the masculine in a man looks different than the masculine in a woman, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It should.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to wear a 3-piece business suit to initiate, to press into something, to shape and construct something. So the feminine is, if the masculine is more of the doing, the feminine is more of the being, right? So it's that nurtures. If you look in Scripture, wisdom is she. All through Proverbs, wisdom is a she. Ships are called she. I'm not sure why that is.
It's true.
They are.
And hurricanes are typically.
I think so. Although there's Hugo, so maybe,
I know we got a male finally.
Not all storms are women. Hopefully, we can create a few though. So it's the more nurturing, the being. I think Mary is a beautiful picture of the feminine. Mary, the mother of Jesus, where the angel visits her. She has to be in complete shock. I'm sure she's this young teenage girl who's never seen an angel, never been spoken to like this, and says to her, "Here's your assignment. You're gonna house the Savior, right?" And her response is the true feminine. She says, "Be it unto me according to your will." She was able to submit. She was able to receive. She was able to be and to receive, because that was masculine. I'm going to implant the seed in you. That's the masculine initiation. And the feminine is very receptive. I'm going to receive from you. So that's kind of how I look at those two things. Then we get into the false, and this is where we get into trouble in relationships. And marriage is our primary relationship, usually if we're married. So the false masculine can go one of two ways. The false masculine can go into heavy control. He's a bully, or he thinks he should be in control. He thinks that's what a man should do and should be. So he might order his family around, his wife around. I'm the CEO, and when I come home, I'm still the CEO here. And it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for real relationship and real communication. So the false masculine can get all into this kind of egotism, and can also get very sexualized. That's the false masculine, the over-sexualized man, the man in pornography, the man who's constantly needed to look at another woman or make these sexual conquests. The other false masculine, Carrie, is when a man really gives up his place. Yeah. Right? His place, his headship, because headship is invested by the Lord. Now, it's not control. It's not control. But there is a headship that's invested by the Lord. And when he gives that up, when he's passive, when he's compliant, or when he's passive aggressive, he's no longer standing in that beautiful place of authority. And when I say authority, that's an authority submitted to the Lord. So he's under authority as well. And so those are kind of the two places of the false masculine in a man. I'm talking about the false masculine in a woman, or the false feminine, in a woman, can also look like she's trying to control. She'll more often use manipulation, some underhanded chicanery, something that's a little bit different. Sometimes it's full out control. You look at Jezebel in the Bible, and oh my goodness, there's a picture. So that's the false masculine in a woman. The false feminine in a woman, she's overly masculinized. Also, the false feminine in a woman looks like a woman who's too compliant, too submitted. She doesn't have her own identity. And health in a marriage springs from each person having a healthy sense of who they are, a healthy identity in the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
They know who they are. They're able to form their own ideas and opinions. They're able to have healthy communication. They're willing to have even difficult communication with their spouse, and not be overly compliant, overly sentimentalized, overly, my son's in jail, bless his heart, I know he wasn't selling drugs. No, that's the false feminine.
Right.
Get a grip. Your son's
Face
in
reality.
jail for selling drugs. Of course you care. You're his mama, but you're not going to help him like that. That's the false, and it's a very weak form of the true feminine. Yeah. True feminine is strong. Look at the Proverbs 31. This woman had dignity. She had honor. She had business acumen. She had real strength. She had kindness too and wisdom. But she's buying and selling land, right. and we don't all have to buy and sell land, but she wasn't stuck in a role. Right? So that would just kind of be my summary, the underlying foundation for talking about the masculine and the feminine, and then how it relates in a marriage. Yeah.
And I heard you talk about this years ago. You were leading Kairos at Gateway Church. And that was the first time I ever was exposed to, your teaching and your wisdom. And it was one of those things that I didn't have, I didn't have anything in me yet that even knew how to absorb what you were sharing, because I was in the false feminine, and I was that weakened, kind of very compliant, overly submissive, didn't have my own identity established. And so I remember hearing you, but thinking, I don't even know how to get there. Where's the roadmap to what she's talking about, And you, once you have the true lens of God's design of masculine and feminine, you can celebrate both and see how they fit together really perfectly.
Oh, yes.
When we're not operating in those false versions.
Oh, yes.
And it's just like, in my experience, and I wanted to ask you, because you have obviously worked with so many individuals and couples, but I feel like this is one of the underlying issues in marriage, is the dynamic being off between the masculine and the feminine in one person. And when it's off in one person, it affects the whole dynamic. And so I just wanted to hear what you've seen in that, and do you feel like it is a pretty big underlying theme for what's going on in marriages?
Oh yes. I would say there's two arenas where this is a huge underlying theme. One is in marriages, and one is in the church realm.
Wow. We're going there.
We're going there.
It's true.
Because until we have this right understanding and the right honor for one another between men and women, right? And I'm not calling the masculine men and the women the feminine, but we demonstrate more of it. Till we have the right understanding and the right honor, the church cannot rise in the fullness it's intended to be. Right?
I 100% agree.
Show the power and the glory of the Lord to the world. And I know that that's changing in some arenas right now.
Right.
And I've been around church life now for many decades, and I can testify it's changing, and there is more place and space given to women, and more honor, and more of she's feminine. She might have a little different opinion because she has a different take on it. She's coming maybe from the more feminine, the more receptive, relatable, because the receptive is also that which creates those relationships. So in the church, it just absolutely has to be recognized and healed, repented where there's been misogyny and misandry, which is the hatred of the feminine and the hatred of the masculine. And that always comes from past wounds. We're trying to defend ourselves. So in marriage, to speak to what you've asked, one of the things we're going to have to do is recognize this. Do I have my identity in the Lord, and is it solid, so that I can come from a solid place and speak the truth in love.
Yeah.
That's what we're called to. And that's what we're called to in marriage. Uh-huh. And I heard somebody say one time, a whole woman is a whole lot of trouble. That's right. And a whole man's a whole lot of trouble. Whole people try to speak the truth in love to one another. And that can create some differences. And so I feel like identity is a big part. So we can't have our identity if we haven't dealt with past wounds. If I was wounded by my father, and I was, and you were, we know each other's story somewhat, we're not going to enter marriage well if those wounds aren't healed, because we're going to have all kind of expectations. One might be, oh, you're going to be everything my dad wasn't. You're gonna listen to me. You're gonna see me. You're gonna know me. You're not gonna hurt me like my dad did. Or my dad was too passive. You're gonna rise up and be right, and that's gonna create a lot of conflict because we didn't marry the perfect person, right? Or if a man has wounds from his mother, his sisters, his stepmother, even his dad, that's going to affect marriage too. So one of the first things we've got to do is say, Holy Spirit, help me, first of all, even recognize these sometimes subterranean wounds that I'm not even at a conscious level that I'm operating from, and I think I'm operating in reality, and I'm not. I'm really just reacting to you in this current situation, but it's from my past that I'm reacting and not responding to the real you right now. So how can we as a husband and wife work this out if I'm reacting to you from my past? Because the past will be, if there's pain there, it'll be laden with lies. Those old messages about who we are and what life is like, and all of that stuff that we're still trying to, not feel. And so a lot of our pain is repressed. And then you get married. Whoa, it is not easy to repress it. Because it's 24/7.
That's so true. That's right.
And that stuff's
going to come out.
You told me about a situation with Roe and how you reacted, and it was from past pain.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you beautifully were able to see, by the Spirit's help, okay, that is a reaction, not a response. That's not who Roe is. Roe was patient with you. He responded, told you what he was doing. Y'all were able to, but those kind of things are going to happen. And if Roe had been reactive himself, how dare you blame me, and how could you even think that of me? Because he had past wounds. Well, then you just got conflict all the time, just sparking up all the time from it.
I'm so excited. My Feminine Daily Journal Guide is available now on Amazon. So please go and get yours. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It has been a journal practice that has really blessed my life, and I want to share it with you as well. I was actually having lunch with someone yesterday, and we were talking about this very thing of how the lies, the messages that are spoken into us that carry the most power sometimes to define us are lies.
Absolutely. And we've gotten in agreement with them.
Yeah, and we've agreed with it, and then they're so deeply rooted, and then so much pain gets attached to continue to reaffirm the lie that it becomes the deepest place in us that has to be entrenched only with the help of Jesus, who said, I am the truth, and the truth will set you free. We don't get set free any other way with any other tools or resources. It's just going to be the truth that he brings. And he's so good. One thing I love in scripture is that truth is never stands alone. It always has love or grace, kind of walking with it.
I love that.
And I feel like none of us could handle the truth of ourselves apart from knowing that there's grace and love. And we will even deceive ourselves if we do not see truth coupled with love and grace.
That's right.
We'll have to continue to, soften the truth about ourselves. And I feel like once we allow truth to come in, and a lot of times it's going to be from the person that's closest to us that sees us every day. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but we can handle it.
Yeah.
And there can be freedom and breakthrough. Yeah. But if it's delivered without love and grace, no one, and I think that's kind of what you end up in these dynamics where it's just conflict. Everyone is just trying to deliver the truth, and this is what I see, but it's outside of the context now of grace and love.
Right.
Because we've all gone into self-protection mode, and it's you and not me. And anyway, but I just think it's so true.
No, I agree. And we get into these places where it's just my pain butting up against your pain. And that's why we need the context of covenant love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have God's covenant love, and we need to deeply, deeply know and experience that. And then I'm confident enough to be married and to be with another person, because you're not my source.
Mm-hmm.
He is, first of all, my source. And then I can enter in covenant love in a marriage. And within that covenant, that's where the safety is, to be honest with one another. So if someone breaks covenant by an adulterous affair or deception or, just misusing us over time, then we no longer have that security that we could even speak the truth in love. I mean, things are going to disintegrate. It is absolutely not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So within when we think about the feminine and the masculine within marriage, I think it can be such a beautiful thing. When a husband invites his wife, honors his wife, and invites her into shared headship, co-participation, I think that's the key.
Yeah.
I love what Paul wrote. He wrote, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Paul, it was Peter. I believe it's in 1 Peter 3, where he talks about being joint heirs of his grace, heirs together of the grace of God. And then he adds this little phrase right at the end. He says that your prayers be not hindered.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are more modern translations of that. But, I've had people come to me in the 20 years I was a counselor, and, God isn't answering this, and God isn't. And sometimes with a man, I would have to say, well, let me ask you a question. How do you treat your wife?
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe God wants to treat you so well, but maybe you're reaping what you've sown.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's part of it, because it seems to me like your prayers might be being hindered. Mm-hmm. So is there something you need to adjust so that he could answer those prayers in the way that you want them answered? Are you inviting your wife in to shared participation of his grace, to shared headship? Or are you just making all the decisions? Mm-hmm. This is the house we'll buy, the car we'll buy, the way we'll spend our money, right? And so what happens then, and this is what I was talking about a while ago with the false masculine, he takes all the power. He takes the power in the relational power. And she doesn't feel like she has the money she wants to spend, or the say she would like to, and she should have as an adult. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I will see that show up, if that happens over a number of years in a marriage, because of course we get in these patterns in our marriage. Right. It will show up in her body as a sickness. Mm-hmm.
Lots of autoimmune. Because you're internalizing what you can't externally solve for. So you literally turn against your own self. Right.
And you feel hopeless and powerless, and you have thoughts of powerlessness. Often I think that's what depression springs from. And the body's going to speak. Mm-hmm. If we're not resolving things, or if we can't speak up, or if when we do speak up it's not resolved, sometimes the body will hold that in. And I think divorce is absolutely a last resort. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I see people being so diminished. I mean, their personhood is taken away in the marriage, men and women both, that they've got to escape that to save their life and to save their soul. Yeah. So so the true masculine, though, sees a woman in her femininity, values it, honors it, welcomes it, right? Yeah. She's just not somebody who's supposed to be pregnant barefoot in the kitchen serving him, right? She's valuable as a person in herself.
had a really sweet experience last night. My latest book just hit Amazon, and so exciting.
Yeah.
And my sweet husband called together, several friends and people to come and just have dinner and celebrate me.
Oh.
And I'm so grateful that he, not only does he support me in every way imaginable, but he celebrates me. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have asked for anything like that. I would have just gone on with, it's been released and it's all good. But he wanted that moment to be celebrated with friends and family. And that to me is such a beautiful example of what it looks like between the masculine and the feminine, that we can celebrate each other. Mm-hmm. And there's not that competitiveness thing happening. There's just truly honor and cherishing one another and celebrating one another. And when I want to jump back to the church for just a minute, because, I was in full-time ministry in churches for 23 years and then running, faith-based nonprofits. And so been around the block a few times, and so have you. And I've been in a lot of different contexts when it comes to the issues of men and women, masculine and feminine, all of that in the church. And I've watched so many things change and shift over, especially the last, I would say, decade. It's been some really good things and then some things that kind of disturb me as well. Mm-hmm. But one thing I feel like I want to hear from you on is that I believe that when the women are empowered in the church to function and to offer what they carry uniquely, that it should not in any way diminish or take away from the role that God has given to men. But at the same time, it should actually empower them even more and celebrate them even more, and vice versa. It's the same, that when we, when they allow us to step into our role, that it's only going to benefit them. It's just truly a mutual benefit. Yes. And I think we've been afraid of what that would look like. And then I feel like we've kind of swung the other way. And in a lot of representations I see now, I feel like what I've watched with women in Christian leadership is very masculine energy and very much the warrior, mindset, which that's a part of, what we carry. It's not that but it's kind of become the exclusive representation of the feminine in church. And then I feel like with men in the church, it has almost felt like a little bit of an emasculation has taken place, where they almost have to apologize for the role that God gave them. And
for being a man,
for being a man. And as I was growing up, it was definitely the opposite. I grew up in a very conservative church where women were just to remain silent, and we could take care of children, and that was it.
And make the food.
And make food and pray silently at home.
And maybe play the piano.
Maybe. We didn't have that. We were Church of Christ. There was no instruments. Sorry. Couldn't do that either, Barbara. So I just want to hear a little bit more from you on what you're seeing, because you've watched this, over the decades, and I just want to hear what you're seeing right now in that.
Yeah. Well, I think, that I'm woman, hear me roar.
Yeah.
I think if we're going to say that, I'm woman, hear me roar, we need to also say, and he is man, hear him roar. Yeah. That the roar of the Lion of the tribe of Judah can come up through both of us.
Yes.
And so it's not, I haven't had my place in the church, which is often true. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to now gain my place. There seems to be a bit of an opening, things seem to be shifting. I'm going to gain my place by stepping over him or on top of him. Mm-hmm. That is absolutely ungodly. Yeah. I'm going to usurp his God-given authority and take all of mine and more, and his. Yeah. And so, God's not gonna honor that. That's gonna be so off, and you're gonna feel it. If you're in a church like that, I visited a church. This is just popped in my mind. It's been a number of years ago, and I can't remember if the if the man and woman are both pastor, but anyway, she was the head pastor. But that wasn't what bothered me. What bothered me was just her demeanor and she had very much that intense warrior thing going all the time. There was never quietness. There was never, and the whole front row, there were these women sitting there, and I supporting her, which is great, but supporting her emotionally is great. Supporting all that, I don't think is. But I knew a couple of them, and I knew they were not secure in their own identity as a person. So, I think the pendulum does tend to swing, though. If we've been over here, and we do have a few church fathers like John Calvin and some of those that just thought the lowest of the low about women.
Right. Yes. Why are they here?
He was a great man, but wow. Yeah, to serve me only. But, and then we've had some denominations that are, I think, pretty repressive, others that aren't. But the pendulum sometimes swings now this way and swings a little too far before we find that correction and that balance. And sometimes you just have to let those things play out. I'm in a wonderful church right now where there's I feel just very honored as a person. I feel like the women are honored. The pastors honor their wives. Women are given positions in the church of leadership, and but they're a little bit different generation too. They're a little bit younger, and they didn't come up under some of that, so they expect women to have a certain strength to them, and they expect women to offer opinions and not be called Jezebel or something because they offered an opinion. I want to say sometimes, do you know how much Jezebel hated God and hated the prophets, and how, don't be throwing that around. Men can be Jezebels too. But,
But that does seem to be a little bit of an underlying theme I have seen as well, as if there is a woman who is strong and she stands behind what she believes in, it's really a quick knee-jerk reaction to start labeling. She's Jezebel. And I'm like, okay, that's a big thing to throw on someone. Like, that's not a thing. I mean, there's a reason you don't have a lot of little girls named Jezebel running around. Like, nobody really wants to be identified as Jezebel. And I feel like we throw that on women, pretty easily if they are, stronger.
I think that's true. And, Scripture indicates we know one another by the Spirit. We discern, not because you have a stronger or different personality than me, and maybe I'm a little threatened by that. Often that's misogyny. That's like, oh, the feminine is rising. Put that down. But the true feminine is very beautiful. You want the true feminine to rise. And I watched the women's lib movement. I was, a young woman, older in that time, and there was some real solid complaints that need to be addressed.
Sure, I agree.
Things like salary disparity, and abuse of women in marriages, and those sorts of things. But I think what happened was that I'm woman, hear me roar. I will step on man to get what I want, which again was a reaction, and women moved into the misandry, which is fear of or hatred of the masculine, rather than into, I will respect you, but I do expect you to change things around here. I want to have my place as well as you have your place. But I don't think that can be accomplished in the world.
Right.
But I think in the church it can be accomplished when we listen to the Lord, when we honor one another, and when we see what the Lord is up to. So, I think there is that big overreaction. Some things still need to be corrected. But to me, it is about honor. It is about seeing one another in the Spirit. It still surprises me occasionally when I speak up and say something in a meeting or something, and someone actually listens, because I had so many years of like,
yes, everyone's clenching because she spoke.
I believe it's the Lord, but oh boy, down girl, and so I think the church the church has a ways to go,
Mm-hmm.
And we could learn a lot from one another if we were willing to listen. And
Right.
I think if men could just listen sometimes to how women feel about how they've been treated,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that we have really suffered sometimes, and you just leaves you shaking
Mm-hmm.
your head and thinking, oh my goodness, that's not me at all. You're not even
Yeah.
seeing the real me, or
Mhm.
seeing the real woman that you're complaining about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Well, I love having that discussion with you because I do think it's an issue that is, again, it affects marriages, it affects the church, and it affects our society, how we're dealing with the issues of masculine, feminine, and within our own selves. You know, I looked at the feminine as weak. I viewed that as, if you're
that's
operating in that,
misandry.
then you're just weak. And so
Mm-hmm.
I identified with being weak because I was feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I, ended up being single mom, and I am on my own now, and I jumped into full-blown masculine energy and mindset to what I thought, this is how you have to operate now. If you're going to,
living,
yes, you got to take care of everything, and
take care of things.
And running a nonprofit, which, my gosh, that was a whole undertaking. I was responsible for all of the funding.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone else's job depended on me being able to bring in the money. And I was writing all the programs, overseeing the staff, I mean, all of it. And it was not just being responsible for my household, but for this whole organization. I felt I carried the weight of that. It didn't have to be that way, but that's how I walked that out.
Uh-huh.
And I came to a point where I remember on a regular basis thinking, I didn't say it out loud to people because I was afraid of verbalizing that and what might happen. But I remember consistently thinking, do people know when they're going to have a nervous breakdown, or do they just have one? And I was just, I was nonstop. I was just going full throttle all the time, and trying not to miss anything, with my son, and being at every practice and every game, and traveling to Iraq and working in the refugee camps and coming back and running the organization. And yet I was not able to handle the weight of what I had taken on. And I didn't know that there was another way, that there was a way to be a single mom. There was a way to be in leadership and handle responsibilities as a feminine being.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to do that. So I was unraveling, internally, without trying to externally let anyone know.
Right.
And I think for women in our society today, there's a real struggle with knowing how to be in some of those positions that require us to operate in a lot more of our masculine than traditional roles may have, required of us in the past. We're in these new places, and how can we step into that and still nurture our feminine being?
Uh-huh. Oh, aren't
Barbara.
you going to answer that? Well, what I was kind of seeing as you were talking about that is that pendulum swing. You're over here in really the false feminine, because
Right.
you're overly compliant, overly submissive, overly dependent, and then you swing over here feeling out of necessity. Now I've got to construct and build and initiate and move forward and be in my strength. But there was no balance between that and the feminine. And again, and then now, of course, you've swung back. But I think so much of it is dependent on coming to the Lord, and we're listening. Now, that's the feminine position for men and women. Being receptive, listening, laying things out to the Lord. Who am I? And what do you have for me? And how do I go about it? Mm-hmm. How do I execute this?
Those are really great questions.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And it simplifies how we can then move forward. I think that's, I think whoever's taking notes, those would be the notes to
Okay.
take.
What did I
For
just
sure.
say? I don't know.
It
That's
was really good.
Maybe I
We'll
should
replay
write
it later.
And
So good.
We get the strategy and instructions from the Lord. And I'm not talking about a full blueprint. A lot of times it's just, here's the next step.
Right.
But we're listening. We're asking Him to fill our being. And that is the feminine position. You know, I'm submitted to you. I'm surrendered to you. I'm asking you, and you're going to speak to me. Because if anyone is the full masculine, it's God. He holds both within Himself.
Yes.
And I love Exodus, I think it's 34:6. It's the first full description God gives of Himself. Genesis and Exodus, He is the I am. And we see His power. We see Him doing all sorts of things. And then as Moses sees Him passing by, He describes Himself. And He describes Himself in these feminine terms. You know, the tenderness and gentleness of His nurture, His loving kindness, His willingness to show mercy and forgive sin. So He is fully both. But as we listen, as we ask Him, and then we stay practicing His presence, asking Him to strengthen us continually. And again, it's not I've got the masculine strength and I wear a 3-piece suit. Although, do men even wear 3-piece suits anymore? Probably not.
I haven't seen any in a while.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They look sharp though.
Fortunately. That then we say, out of my identity. And see, our identity probably continually needs to be healed. We're always in the process of becoming who we are.
Yeah.
Right? And we continually ask Him for that strengthening for the assignment He gives us, to give us that powerful voice, to give us the everything we need to do that, but we're unwilling to step into the false masculine or the false feminine and manipulate. And so I think when you came out of that marriage and you came out of those things, God was healing your identity as a person.
Yes.
The fullness of the true feminine and the full masculine. And you just didn't know how to be who you were fully yet, right? And then you married, and that, added a whole other wonderful layer to things. But I think as we progress with the Lord, is sometimes we need help. Sometimes we need counseling or coaching. A good coach is really helpful there, so that we can differentiate, because we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
How can I act like a woman and do this? Sometimes we need something modeled for us, right? And then we need to know how to ask for help, and we need to be able to say, I think I'm at my breaking point. What does a nervous breakdown look like?
Yeah.
Help me.
I think that's really valuable, because going to Him as our source and letting Him flow through us and give us everything we need, where we don't feel like I have to be my own source and so I'm going to run out. And that's how I was feeling, because I wasn't tapping in and just receiving and letting Him speak value and identity to me. And then from that place, what came of that was, like Jesus said, my burden is easy. And, I was not experiencing that because I thought I had to shoulder it in my own strength. And I think that's what women can have a tendency to do is, I got to just muster it up, and I got to, be able to handle all of this. And it's that step one is in His presence. I have everything I need for a life and godliness. Apart from that, I can do no good thing. Like, those are the two realities. Everything I'm doing is a lot of activity, and it's stressful, and it's wearisome and burdensome, and it's not actually producing eternal fruit.
Well, and that's John 14 and 15.
Yes.
As we stay attached to the vine, He is in us, we're in Him. That's where the fruit comes, because I'm abiding, right? And the fruit is guaranteed to come in whatever measure is our destiny. I think. I think we continually are listening to the Lord for who we are and what we're about and our next assignment. But the most important thing is abiding in His presence. And knowing that's who we are by knowing Him. but it takes a season or two. It takes a hot minute, right?
He will let you get over yourself.
He will let you get
He will let you get to the end.
And now you're doing it this way, and you just realize, well, no wonder I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I've been doing this on my own. You know, I even think about writing the book. Congratulations. It's just wonderful. That's come out. That's been in your heart a while.
Yeah.
And I published a book in June.
Yes, I definitely wanted you to be able to hit on that because I would love for people to.
Well, actually, I have a whole chapter in there on the masculine and feminine.
I know.
The book is called Voices of the Soul, Dr. Barbara Byers. But what I was going to say about a book, writing a book is both feminine and masculine, and neither one of us wrote a book because I'm going to be an author. I'm going to define myself as this, right? Writing is hard work, but we both wrote a book because we were listening to the Lord. The Holy Spirit, like Mary, He put something in the womb of our spirit to say, write this. Shape it this way, and the shaping is the masculine, initiating that and keeping at it when you're tired and when you're like, oh, I don't know if I'll ever finish this book.
And then the edits.
Then you got to go back. When I said I don't know if I'll ever finish this book. It's all that diddly. Why I have so many quotes in this book. But then we see it. The baby's born. And it takes both the feminine, the more intuitive, the listening, the creative, and the masculine operating. And it's not, I'm just going to, dash something out here because I want to be known as an author. So the Holy Spirit's always waiting for just that next beautiful, creative thing He's going to do with us as we collaborate with Him. And then what's even better is we get that, and then we get to collaborate with one another on things. And so it really makes it beautiful. Yeah. So, and in marriage, that's one of the primary places you see that.
Well, I have loved our conversation. I was so excited to have you.
Thank you.
I have obviously been able to learn from you for years and love your book. I took it with me on my last flight so that I could start reading and devouring it. And highly recommend. Everyone will have all the links, obviously, so that y'all can find Barbara and get her book. But you will be blessed by reading her book. You will be enriched. There are going to be things that I didn't know about my soul. I had no idea how much was involved in the soul part of me. And when I think about spirit, soul, body, the alignment that can come when we operate from the spirit. And then that permeates our soul. Right. And then our body is getting to experience the overflow of that alignment. It's just how we were created to live. But I feel like you do such a great job of taking people through all of the different parts of the soul that make up our being. And I've learned so much from that. And Barbara has a lot of resources that y'all can access on her website and through her YouTube channel. So definitely follow her. And thank you so much for this conversation. It's been amazing. I knew it would be. And you're my first, other than obviously with my son, but you're my first guest. So this was super fun.
Yay.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank
you were on my list for a long time to have. Like my dream guest list. So anyway, but thank you so much.
Hair and makeup lady?
I know.
Guy.
we're not that fancy yet, Barbara.
I've never had that done anyway. I don't know why I'm saying that. Crazy.
We just want to feel, like feminine.
Our best.
Maybe next time. I'll work on that.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Live Abundantly podcast. I hope it was a blessing for you. Hit subscribe or click that notification bell so that you can be notified every time we upload another podcast. Go to my website, carriegraceconsulting.com, and click on that link to get the newsletter. It'll be sent straight to your email every month. You'll love the content that we have in that monthly newsletter. Thank you so much.